You're watching Beyond 100 Days. More reactions are pouring in on the rescue of school children in Kuriga, Kaduna State. President Bola Tinubu has commended the National Security Advisor, security agencies, and the Kaduna State government for the dispatch and diligence with which they handled the situation. He also assured Nigerians that his administration is deploying detailed strategies to ensure that schools in the country remain safe and indeed safe sanctuaries of learning. Also, presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election, Peter Obi, speaking via his verified ex-handle, praised the federal government, the security services, and everyone else who put forth great effort to ensure that the children were freed from captivity and reunited with their families. He said no Nigerian should ever be held captive or hostage anywhere in their fatherland. For the chairman of the Senate Committee on Nigerian Army, Abdulaziz Yaradua, the rescue operation adhered to adhered to military principles and was executed promptly. He went on to praise the military and their collaboration with other security units for this outstanding performance. The federal government insists no ransom was paid in rescue of the school children. So what are the lessons learned in this latest abduction? Is this an end to the kidnap of school children in Kaduna State? The issue of kidnapping, in Kaduna State predates President Bola Tinubu as the First Lady, Nigeria's First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has called on state governors and lawmakers to prescribe capital punishment for kidnapping. I'm joined now on the program by former aide to President Goodluck Jonathasn, Reno Omokri, joins us live from Walnut Creek in California. I guess it's morning there. Good morning, Mr. Omokri. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. The kids are alive and well. No doubt, huge relief for everyone. Can we assume that this will never happen again, or hope against hope that future kidnapping and abductions will be prevented?
Well, thank you for having me. It's going to be a very big disappointment for anybody who thinks it's not going to happen again. Things like this don't just stop. They can stop gradually, but they don't stop suddenly. So we're going to have these abductions, we're going to have these states of insecurity, but the thing is, gradually, they're going to fade away, but it's not going to be a sudden thing.
Interesting way you have put it, but there are many questions that have also been asked. The question again and again as to how did we have all of these children, kidnapped in broad daylight? But particularly, what's your take on the information suggesting that they were rescued in Zamfara State?
Well, a lot of people in Nigeria are not very conversant with the country, and that's why I encourage Nigerians to travel, get to know Nigeria. A lot of people sit in Lagos and Abuja and then they make postulations. You got to understand something. During the Second World War, it took the Allies years to get rid of the Nazis from Belgium. Now, Belgium is a country that is actually smaller than Kaduna State. Belgium has a total landmass of about 11,000 square miles. Now, Kaduna State has a total landmass of about 17,000 square miles. So this is a very large state. When you look at the map of Nigeria, it can be, it can be deceptive. You think that Nigeria is a small country. Now, Kaduna shares a border with Zamfara. Zamfara on its own is also larger than Belgium. Zamfara as a state is larger than Qatar. So when you look at these two states, Zamfara is about 15,000 square miles. You're looking at a total of 32,000 square miles. Now, when you have these, let's say, bandits or kidnappers or non-state actors, they don't go by the normal routes that people travel on. They don't go on roadways, on waterways, or on airways. No, they travel in the forest, in jungles. And between Kaduna and Zamfara, there are an unbroken chain of jungles, forests. And I've been in these jungles. I've been in Taraba State. Some of these jungles, you can actually walk for 1 week and you have not gotten even to half of the breadth of these jungles. So when people begin to say, oh, how could they have allowed these kids, to just travel to Zamfara State and then there were no security agencies, you're assuming that they're going to go on roadways. No, they didn't go on roadways. They went through forests. And so it's a very, very difficult situation. We have to understand the terrain of Nigeria. I commend the security agencies for having gotten these kids released, but right now, what we now have to think about is we have to think about solutions. In Nigeria, we tend to think about the problem and the reaction. But for you to have societal change, positive societal change in a country, three things have to happen. PRS, they call it, problem, reaction, solution. In Nigeria, we have the problem, the reaction, but we don't have the solution. We need to start talking about the solution. What is the solution to this crisis? Obviously, our current national security architecture cannot remain the way it is because it cannot solve this crisis. First and foremost, we've got, I think, probably the best national security advisor, in the history of this country, Malam Nuhu Ribadu. And that's why I'm saying that we cannot see an abrupt end to these abductions. We're going to see a gradual end, and we're actually seeing that. However, the National Security Advisor's Office is right now overburdened. If you look at the United States, if you look at Canada, if you look at other countries where they have the Office of the National Security Advisor, what you find is that the NSA tends to, focus on international, threats to a country, cyber security, threats to the critical infrastructure of a country like dams, airports, ports, things like that. And then also food security. National security advisors and their offices do not really go into local security issues. So if you remember the movie, I don't know if you remember the movie, First Blood. If you remember that movie, you see, you had Sylvester Stallone. There was a crisis in a state. The name of that state was Washington State in America, although it's fictional. And then there was a town there, Hope. You see that crisis in that town was taken care of by the sheriff of that town. When he could not handle it, he invited the state. When the state could not handle it, then he invited the FBI. That's how it should be in Nigeria. The solution to this crisis is that we need to have state police. If we don't have state police, these things will keep on happening, even if we have an angel as our national security advisor, and even if we have, angels as our security chiefs.
Mr. Omokri, when you say state police, that term in itself has undergone a lot of definitions over the years. You'll find out that many state governments now have their own local police outfits, like the Amotekun that we have, in Ondo State. Precisely what are you referring to?
Well, when you talk about state police, Amotekun is not the state police because Amotekun, they are not armed. So Amotekun is, if you want to be fair to them, you could say a military. They're very, very successful because you can see that in the Southwest, especially in the states that they operate in, there is a very good reduction of insecurity. However, when you're talking about state police, you got to understand that when Nigeria was being thought of as a country, the founding fathers and the British colonial authorities, they realized that you could not have a single central policing system. That's why in pre-independent Nigeria, we had regional police. A lot of people don't even know that. So, because we didn't have states, we had regions. So we had regional police. They call them native authority police. So you had the federal police, and they also had the native authority police. So if you're my age, in the 80s, they had a program on TV called Icheku. If you remember that program, I think it was done in Igbo language. The policemen in that program were actually regional police from the eastern region. So you also had a regional police in the western region. In the northern region, they were called, I think they were called Yandoka, yeah. So we need to go back to that. What happened is that after the first military coup, January 15, 1966, Major General Agui Ironsi came into power, and then he abrogated all of that. So we now had a single federal policing structure. But that is inadequate for a country like Nigeria. With a multi-dimensional country, with very, very heterogeneous. I'm going to give you an example. You talk about this place in Kaduna, Kuriga. Now, if you have a police officer from maybe Imo State, or maybe from Abeokuta, or maybe from Maiduguri, how is he going to know that, okay, a face is a strange face in the community? He's not from the community. He was brought from, Abuja, sent there. He doesn't really know the community like the back of his hand. So if this is a strange face, how is he going to know? He's not going to know. And he doesn't understand the terrain the way a local will understand the terrain. So that's why you're going to have security incidences like this. But if you have state police, if you have regional police, if you have community police, that is like what we had in the First Republic in pre-independence Nigeria, people from the community who are being controlled by the state through local governments and emirs, you will be able to identify strange faces, because the people who did this Kuriga abduction, they were not people from Kuriga. They were strange faces. And so that is the key. We've got to go back to community policing.
Absolutely. I hear you clearly. We have just one more minute. I spoke with the Kaduna State Governor earlier, who have been talking about how some individuals have politicized this release. The question of whether it was a release or a rescue in the sense of it. What do you think should be the right reaction at this time, particularly from Nigerians?
Well, that's the thing. You see, if we have security crisis like this, Nigerians should come together and, we should be pointing our hands at solution. Like I told you, PRS, problem reaction solution. I mean, you take into account a man like Peter Obi. When Peter Obi was governor of Anambra State was actually more insecure than Kaduna State is right now. And yet you have this man pontificating. You have him sounding sanctimonious. When he was governor of Anambra State, and if you're watching at home, you can actually fact check me, you had hundreds of Anambra youths, men, boys killed extrajudicially by the state SARS and their bodies dumped in the Ezu River. I mean, Anambra was so insecure they had daylight robberies. So when you have, and this man was a governor there, he was not able to resolve it. How many people politicized those situations where that was happening under him as governor? But then when this incident happened, look at the kinds of things he was saying on Twitter, riling up his base, turning them against the federal government. You make it that much more difficult to resolve this crisis when you have citizens going against their own government on social media and on the ground.
Well, Mr. Obi recently gave some kudos to the federal government for the latest release of the abducted school children in Kaduna State. But that's our time, Mr. Omokri. Reno Omokri is former aide to President Goodluck Jonathasn. Thank you so much for talking to us on the program this evening.
Thank you for having me, and may God bless you.
That's our show today. You can watch it all over again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntowe. Join us at 7 p.m. for a more comprehensive bulletin.